As you take your first breath this morning, a startling realization settles in. Nothing will ever be the same. The air feels different, charged with a strange electricity, as if the world itself is holding its breath, waiting for you to notice what has changed. You sit up, the sheets tangled around your legs, and for a moment you can't quite place what's wrong. The familiar hum of your thoughts is interrupted by a silence so profound it's almost deafening. It's as if the universe has paused, inviting you to listen, to see, to feel something you've always managed to avoid. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that every invisible chain that ever held you, every expectation, every rule, every whispered should and must, has vanished. The doors are unlocked, the walls have crumbled. The world, once so carefully ordered, is now a vast open plain stretching endlessly in every direction. There are no signs, no maps, no voices telling you where to go or what to do. You are, for the first time, truly free. But as you stand at the edge of this new reality, the truth dawns on you all at once. Freedom is not the gentle golden light you always imagined. It is not the sweet taste of liberation, the easy exhale after years of holding your breath. No, freedom is something else entirely. It is a storm, a void, a dizzying expanse that threatens to swallow you whole. The possibilities are infinite, and so are the dangers. Every step you take is yours alone, every choice a leap into the unknown. You feel it in your chest, a tightness, a fluttering panic. The world is open, yes, but it is also terrifyingly empty. There is no one to blame, no one to follow, no one to save you from yourself. The safety of certainty, the comfort of boundaries, the warmth of belonging, they are gone. In their place is a question that echoes through your mind, relentless and unanswerable. What will you do now? You try to remember the stories you've been told about freedom, the heroes who broke their chains, the rebels who defied the system, the dreamers who carved their own paths. They made it look so easy, so glorious. But standing here in the raw, unfiltered light of possibility, you realize that those stories left something out. They never spoke of the fear, the vertigo, the crushing weight of responsibility that comes with being truly free. Why is it, you wonder, that the very thing we claim to desire above all else, the thing we fight for, sing about and build monuments to, can feel so unbearable when it is finally within our grasp? Why does freedom, in its purest form, terrify us? You look around and see the evidence everywhere. People clinging to routines, to ideologies, to leaders who promise certainty. Societies built on rules and rituals, on hierarchies and traditions. Even in the most progressive corners of the world, there is a quiet, desperate longing for someone to tell us what to do, who to be, how to live. We speak of freedom as if it is the highest good, but when faced with its reality, we shrink back, inventing new cages to replace the old. Is it possible that we are not, as we like to believe, creatures yearning for liberation, but rather beings who crave the safety of limits, that the unknown is not a code playground, but a nightmare from which we seek refuge? What if the greatest threat to our happiness is not oppression, but the terrifying prospect of having to choose for ourselves? You remember a time when you were a child, standing at the edge of a diving board, the water below dark and deep, the world behind you was safe, parents watching, rules to follow, a path clearly marked. But out there, in the air, in the fall, in the splash, there was only you. The freedom to jump was yours, but so was the fear. You hesitated, heart pounding, until someone called your name, told you it was okay, gave you permission to leap. Even then, the freedom was never absolute. It was always mediated, softened, made bearable by the presence of another. Now, as an adult, the stakes are higher. The choice is more complex, the consequences more severe. The world demands that you decide what to believe, whom to love, how to spend your days, what to make of your life. Each decision is a door that closes forever on 1,000 other possibilities. Each act of freedom is also an act of loss. You begin to see the paradox at the heart of the human condition. We long for freedom, but we are haunted by it. We build societies to protect ourselves from the chaos of choice, to shield ourselves from the terror of the unknown. We invent gods, laws and customs to give shape to the formless, to make the infinite manageable, and yet beneath it all, there is a restless hunger, a voice that whispers, "There must be more." What is it about freedom that unsettles us so deeply? Is it the fear of making the wrong choice, of failing, of being exposed as inadequate? Is it the burden of responsibility, the knowledge that there is no one else to blame? Or is it something deeper, a primal terror of the void, of the emptiness that lies beyond the boundaries we have drawn? You think of the stories that have shaped you, the myths, the fairy tales, the cautionary tales. So many of them warn against the dangers of straying too far, of seeking too much, of wanting more than you are given. Prometheus, punished for stealing fire. Icarus, doomed for flying too close to the sun. Adam and Eve, cast out for tasting forbidden knowledge. Again and again, the message is clear. Freedom comes at a price, and that price is often unbearable. And yet you cannot help but wonder, what if the true danger is not in the pursuit of freedom, but in the refusal to face it? What if the cages we build to protect ourselves become prisons that suffocate us, slowly, quietly, until we forget what it means to be alive? You feel the tension rising within you, a battle between the desire for safety and the longing for something more. You sense it in the world around you, in the way people talk, the way they vote, the way they cling to certainty in an age of uncertainty. There is a collective anxiety, a low hum of dread, as if everyone is waiting for someone else to make the first move, to show them the way. But what if there is no way? What if the path must be forged, step by uncertain step, in the darkness of not knowing? What if the only true freedom is the freedom to be afraid, to be lost, to be vulnerable? You close your eyes and imagine a world where everyone embraces this truth, a world without scripts, without roles, without the comfort of the familiar. What would it look like? Would it be chaos, or would it be something else, something beautiful, wild, and alive? As you open your eyes, the question lingers, heavy and unresolved. The sun is rising, casting long shadows across the floor. The day stretches before you, empty and full of possibility. You realize that the choice is yours, and yours alone. But before you can move, before you can decide, you must confront the great question that lies at the heart of it all. Why does freedom terrify us? Why do we run from the very thing we claim to desire? What are we so afraid of losing, or perhaps of finding? The answer is not simple. It is not something you can grasp in a single moment, or even in a lifetime. It is a riddle, a paradox, a wound that never quite heals, but it is also an invitation, a call to look deeper, to question everything, to step into the unknown. As the world awakens around you, you sense that you are not alone in this struggle. Every human being in every corner of the earth faces the same dilemma. We are all standing at the edge of freedom, trembling, uncertain, longing, and afraid. And so the journey begins, not with an answer, but with a question that will haunt you, challenge you, and perhaps, if you are brave enough, set you free. What lies beneath our fear of freedom? What hidden forces shape our desires, our choices, our very sense of self? And what would it mean to face that fear, to embrace it, to let it transform us? The path ahead is uncertain, the stakes impossibly high. But one thing is clear: nothing will ever be the same. You find yourself standing in the half-light between waking and dreaming, the echoes of that first unsettling question still reverberating in your mind. Why does freedom terrify us? The world outside your window seems unchanged. Cars pass, birds call, people hurry along their well-worn paths, but you sense a deeper current, a hidden undertow pulling at the foundations of everything you thought you understood. You begin to notice the subtle ways in which people avoid the open spaces of possibility. The friend who stays in a job she despises, the neighbor who clings to a loveless marriage, the stranger who scrolls endlessly through curated feeds, numbing himself with the comfort of other people's choices. You see it in yourself too, in the rituals you perform without thinking, the opinions you inherit without question, the dreams you abandon before they can threaten the fragile order of your days. What is this force that keeps us tethered to the familiar, even when it suffocates us? Why do we so often choose the known pain over the unknown possibility? The answer, you realize, is not simple. It is woven into the fabric of our minds, our cultures, our very sense of what it means to be human. You recall the words of Carl Jung, who spoke of the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, the fears and desires we bury beneath layers of habit and denial. Jung understood that true freedom is not merely the absence of external constraints, but the willingness to confront the darkness within. To be free, in the deepest sense, is to face the parts of ourselves we most wish to escape. But the shadow is cunning. It whispers that safety lies in conformity, that happiness is found in obedience, that the price of individuality is too high to pay. It tells us that to step outside the lines is to risk annihilation, not just of the self, but of the fragile bonds that hold us to others. We are social creatures, after all, born into tribes, families, nations. Our identities are shaped by the stories we share, the rules we follow, the roles we play. To break free is to risk exile, loneliness, the terror of being truly alone. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this clearly. He wrote of the herd instinct, the deep, almost biological drive to belong, to merge our will with that of the group. For Nietzsche, the greatest challenge was not to overthrow tyrants or escape oppression, but to overcome the internalized voice of the herd, the voice that says, "Do not stand out, do not question, do not dare." The price of freedom, he warned, is the burden of self-creation, the agony of forging meaning in a world that offers none. You feel the weight of this burden pressing down on you. It is easier, so much easier, to let others decide, to follow the script, to play your part. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the act of lying to oneself, of pretending that you are not free, that your choices are not your own. Sartre insisted that we are condemned to be free, that every moment is a confrontation with the terrifying responsibility of existence. There are no excuses, no authorities to absolve us. We are, each of us, the authors of our own lives. But what if the fear goes even deeper? What if it is not just the fear of responsibility, but the fear of meaninglessness itself? Arthur Schopenhauer, the great pessimist, saw life as a ceaseless striving, a restless hunger that can never be satisfied. For Schopenhauer, freedom is not a blessing, but a curse. The curse of being aware, of knowing that nothing outside ourselves can give us purpose. The world is indifferent, the universe silent. To be free is to stand naked before the void, to invent meaning where none exists. You shudder at the thought. Is this why we cling to our chains? Is this why we build systems, religions, ideologies to shield ourselves from the unbearable lightness of being? Aldous Huxley, in his vision of a brave new world, imagined a society where freedom is traded for comfort, individuality for stability. The citizens of Huxley's world are happy, but their happiness is shallow, purchased at the cost of their souls. They are free from pain, but also from passion, from longing, from the wild, dangerous beauty of desire. You begin to see how these forces shape your own life. The fear of freedom is not just an abstract idea, but a living presence, a shadow that follows you through every decision, every relationship, every dream deferred. It is the voice that says, "Stay safe, don't risk it. You might fail. You might be rejected. You might discover that you are not who you thought you were." Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Frankl understood that even in the most extreme conditions, the fear of freedom persists. It is easier to surrender, to become a victim, to let others define your reality. But true freedom, he insisted, is the courage to choose, even when all choices seem impossible. You realize that the hidden problem is not just psychological, but existential. It is the problem of being human in a world without guarantees. We are born into a universe that offers no instructions, no ultimate authority, no final answers. We are, as Sartre said, abandoned, thrown into existence, forced to make sense of it as best we can. And so we invent stories, rituals, systems of belief. We cling to them, not because they are true, but because they give us the illusion of certainty. We trade freedom for security, possibility for predictability, the unknown for the comfort of the familiar. We build walls around our hearts, our minds, our lives, and call it civilization. But the walls are never high enough. The shadow seeps through the cracks, reminding us that the world is bigger, stranger, more dangerous than we care to admit. The longing for freedom never dies. It is the spark that drives us to create, to explore, to rebel. But it is also the source of our deepest fears, our most persistent anxieties. You begin to see how this hidden force shapes not just individuals, but entire societies. The fear of freedom is the engine of conformity, the root of authoritarianism, the silent architect of every system that promises order at the expense of possibility. It is the reason why revolutions so often give way to new forms of tyranny, why utopias become dystopias, why the dream of liberation so often ends in disappointment. You feel the tension building, the sense that something vital is at stake. The fear of freedom is not just a personal problem, but a collective one, a force that shapes the destinies of nations, the course of history, the fate of the world. It is the reason why progress is so often met with backlash, why change is so difficult, why the future feels so uncertain. And yet you sense that there is more to the story. The fear of freedom is not just a weakness, but a clue, a sign that something important is being hidden, repressed, denied. It is the shadow side of our longing for meaning, our hunger for connection, our desire to belong. It is the price we pay for being conscious, for knowing that we are free. You wonder what would happen if we faced this fear head-on, if we stopped running from it and began to understand it. What new possibilities might emerge? What new forms of life, of community, of meaning might we create? But the answers are not yet clear. The problem is deeper than you imagined, more complex, more insidious. It is not enough to name it, to analyze it, to understand its roots. The fear of freedom is a living force, a presence that shapes every moment of your life. As you stand at the threshold of this realization, you feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. The world is not what it seemed. The chains that bind you are not just external, but internal, woven into the very fabric of your being. You sense that the consequences of this hidden problem are vast, far-reaching, and still largely unseen. The journey is only beginning. The next step will require courage, honesty, and a willingness to confront the unknown. Are you ready to see what lies beneath the surface? Are you prepared to face the unseen consequences of the fear that has shaped your life, your world, your very sense of self? The shadows are lengthening. The questions are multiplying. The truth is waiting, just beyond the edge of certainty. You move through your day, but something is different now. The world's surface, so smooth, so predictable, has begun to crack, revealing the hidden machinery beneath. You notice the small, almost invisible ways the fear of freedom shapes everything around you. It is in the way people speak, the way they move, the way they look away when the conversation turns too honest, too raw. It is in the way you hesitate before making a choice, the way you second-guess your desires, the way you shrink from the vastness of possibility. You begin to see that the consequences of this fear are everywhere, woven into the fabric of daily life. They are not loud or obvious. They do not announce themselves with fanfare or warning. Instead, they creep in quietly, like a fog, blurring the edges of reality, dulling the sharpness of experience. You sense it in the way people cling to routines, to habits, to the comfort of the known. The world becomes smaller, safer, but also less alive. You watch as people trade their dreams for security, their passions for approval, their authenticity for acceptance. You see it in the office worker who never questions the rules, in the artist who censors her own work, in the lover who hides his true feelings for fear of rejection. You see it in yourself, in the choices you make without thinking, in the paths you never take, in the words you swallow before they can escape. The fear of freedom is not just a private torment. It is a collective force, shaping societies, cultures, and histories. It is the silent architect of conformity, the invisible hand that guides the herd. You see it in the way people vote, the way they follow trends, the way they rally behind leaders who promise certainty and order. You see it in the rise of authoritarianism, in the spread of propaganda, in the willingness to sacrifice liberty for the illusion of safety. You begin to understand that the consequences of this fear are not just psychological, but neurological. The brain, after all, is a prediction machine, designed to minimize uncertainty, to seek patterns, to avoid danger. Cognitive biases, those subtle distortions of perception and judgment, are the mind's way of protecting itself from the chaos of possibility. Confirmation bias, status quo bias, authority bias, each one a shield against the terror of the unknown. You realize that your own mind is not immune. You catch yourself seeking reassurance, looking for signs, craving approval. You notice how quickly you retreat to the familiar, how easily you dismiss ideas that threaten your sense of self. The fear of freedom is not just an idea. It is a reflex, a habit, a way of being in the world. You see how culture amplifies this fear, turning it into a system, a structure, a way of life. From childhood, you are taught to obey, to conform, to fit in. The stories you are told at home, at school, in the media, are stories of caution, of limits, of the dangers of standing out. You learn to measure yourself against others, to seek validation, to fear failure. The world becomes a stage, and you a performer, always playing a role, always hiding your true face. You begin to see the cost of this performance. The world is full of people who are alive but not living, who are present but not awake. There is a dullness, a numbness, a sense of something missing. You see it in the way people distract themselves with work, with entertainment, with endless consumption. You see it in the epidemic of anxiety, depression, and loneliness that haunts even the most prosperous societies. You realize that the fear of freedom is not just a personal problem, but a public health crisis. It is the root of so much suffering, so much wasted potential, so much quiet despair. It is the reason why people settle for less, why they sabotage their own happiness, why they turn away from the things that matter most. You see it in the way people relate to each other. The fear of freedom breeds suspicion, envy, resentment. It makes intimacy difficult, vulnerability dangerous, trust almost impossible. People build walls around themselves, afraid to be seen, afraid to be known. Relationships become transactions, negotiations, battles for control. Love becomes a bargain, a compromise, a way of avoiding loneliness rather than a celebration of connection. You see it in the way people relate to themselves. The fear of freedom creates a split, a fracture, a sense of alienation. People become strangers to their own desires, their own bodies, their own souls. They live according to scripts written by others, never questioning, never rebelling, never daring to ask what they truly want. The self becomes a prison, a mask, a performance. You see it in the way people relate to the world. The fear of freedom breeds apathy, cynicism, despair. People stop caring, stop dreaming, stop believing that change is possible. They become spectators, critics, consumers, always watching, never participating. The world becomes something that happens to them, not something they create. You begin to see how this fear shapes the course of history. Every revolution, every movement for liberation is followed by a backlash, a return to order, a longing for the comfort of chains. The dream of freedom is always haunted by the nightmare of chaos. Societies oscillate between periods of openness and periods of repression, never quite able to sustain the courage required to be truly free. You see it in the rise and fall of civilizations, in the cycles of progress and regression, in the endless repetition of the same mistakes. The fear of freedom is the engine of history, the force that drives us forward and pulls us back, the reason why every advance is met with resistance, every breakthrough with backlash. You realize that the consequences of this fear are not just external, but internal. They shape your sense of self, your sense of possibility, your sense of what is real. The world you inhabit is not just a physical space, but a psychological one, constructed from beliefs, assumptions, and expectations. The fear of freedom limits not just what you do, but what you can imagine, what you can desire, what you can become. You begin to feel the urgency of escape. The walls are closing in, the air is growing thin, the light is fading. You sense that something vital is at stake, not just your happiness, but your very humanity. The fear of freedom is a poison, a sickness, a slow death. It is the reason why people give up, give in, disappear. But you also sense that there is a way out, a path through the darkness. The first step is to see the trap, to name it, to understand how it works. The second step is to rebel, to refuse, to say no. The third step is to imagine something different, something better, something more alive. You realize that the fear of freedom is not inevitable, not natural, not unchangeable. It is a habit, a pattern, a story. It can be unlearned, rewritten, transformed. But this requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face the unknown. You feel the tension building, the sense that a breakthrough is possible. The world is not fixed, not finished, not fated. It is open, alive, full of possibility. The only thing standing in your way is the fear that lives inside you, the fear that has been planted and nurtured by 1,000 voices, 1,000 years of history. You begin to see that the real enemy is not the world, not other people, not fate or chance. The real enemy is the part of you that is afraid to be free, the part that clings to certainty, the part that would rather be safe than alive. You sense that the time has come to choose. The consequences of inaction are clear. A life half-lived, a world half-awake, a future half-imagined. The consequences of action are unknown, terrifying, exhilarating. But the choice is yours, and yours alone. You stand at the edge of a new reality, the truth dawning on you all at once. The fear of freedom is real, but so is the possibility of escape. The world is waiting. The future is open. The path is yours to create. Are you ready to rebel? Are you ready to break free? Are you ready to become the author of your own life? The answer is not yet clear, but the question is urgent. The time is now. You stand at the threshold, the weight of unseen consequences pressing against your chest. The world you once knew, safe, predictable, numbed by routine, now feels like a cage whose bars you can finally see. The fear of freedom, once invisible, now pulses in your veins, a living thing. But as the walls close in, something stirs within you, a flicker of defiance, a whisper of rebellion. The question is no longer whether you can bear the terror of freedom, but whether you can bear the cost of remaining unfree. You remember the first time you broke a rule, the first time you said no, the first time you dared to want something for yourself. The memory is sharp, electric, alive. For a moment you felt the world tilt on its axis, the air crackle with possibility. But then came the backlash, the disapproval, the punishment, the cold silence of those who wanted you to stay small. You learned to hide your rebellion, to bury your wildness, to trade your fire for acceptance. But now, standing at the edge of this new reality, you realize that rebellion is not a single act, but a way of being. It is not the loud, dramatic gesture, but the quiet, persistent refusal to be less than you are. It is the decision, made again and again, to choose possibility over certainty, authenticity over approval, aliveness over safety. You begin to see that breaking free is not about destroying the world around you, but about transforming the world within. The real revolution is internal, a shift in perspective, a reimagining of what is possible. The first act of rebellion is to question the stories you have been told, the scripts you have been handed, the roles you have been assigned. You ask yourself, whose voice is this in my head, telling me what I can and cannot do? Whose dreams am I living? Whose fears am I carrying? You begin to notice the ways in which your thoughts are not your own, the ways in which your desires have been shaped by forces you never chose. You see how the fear of freedom has been passed down through generations, encoded in language, in culture, in the very structure of your mind. But you also see that you have a choice. You can begin to unlearn, to disentangle, to reclaim what is yours. You can become the author of your own story, the creator of your own meaning. This is the radical shift, the counterintuitive solution, to turn inward, to face the chaos, to embrace the uncertainty. You remember the words of Nietzsche, become who you are, not who you were told to be, not who you think you should be, but who you are, Wild, unpredictable, alive. This is not a destination, but a process, a becoming. It is the willingness to risk failure, to risk rejection, to risk being misunderstood. It is the courage to stand alone, to walk your own path, to trust your own voice. You look to history for examples, for proof that rebellion is possible. You see the artists who refused to conform, the thinkers who challenged the status quo, the revolutionaries who dared to imagine a different world. You see Galileo defying the church to speak the truth of the stars. You see Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat, igniting a movement. You see James Baldwin writing with fire and tenderness about the cost of freedom in a world built on fear. But you also see the quiet rebels, the ones whose names are not in the history books, the mother who leaves an abusive marriage, the child who refuses to be bullied, the worker who speaks out against injustice. Each act of rebellion, no matter how small, is a crack in the wall, a ray of light in the darkness. You realize that rebellion is not about grand gestures, but about daily choices. It is the decision to tell the truth, even when it is inconvenient. It is the willingness to feel, even when it hurts. It is the refusal to numb yourself with distraction, to lose yourself in the noise. It is the practice of presence, of attention, of aliveness. You begin to experiment, to play, to test the boundaries of your own fear. You say no when you mean no. You say yes when you mean yes. You allow yourself to want what you want, to feel what you feel, to be who you are. You notice the resistance, the discomfort, the old voices rising up in protest. But you also notice something else, a sense of lightness, of possibility, of joy. You realize that breaking free is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice. The fear of freedom does not disappear. It becomes a companion, a teacher, a reminder that you are alive. Each time you choose possibility over certainty, you grow stronger, braver, more yourself. You begin to see the world differently. The walls that once seemed impenetrable now appear thin, fragile, ready to fall. The rules that once felt absolute now seem arbitrary, negotiable, open to change. The future, once a source of dread, now shimmers with potential. You notice others who are waking up, who are beginning to question, to rebel, to create. You find your tribe not of those who agree with you, but of those who are also seeking, also risking, also alive. You realize that freedom is not a solitary pursuit, but a collective one. Each act of rebellion inspires others. Each crack in the wall lets in more light. You begin to imagine new ways of living, new forms of community, new possibilities for connection. What if we built societies not on fear, but on trust? Not on conformity, but on creativity? Not on obedience, but on courage? What if we taught our children to question, to dream, to rebel? What if we celebrated difference, honored vulnerability, embraced uncertainty? You realize that the rebellion is not against the world, but for it. It is an act of love, of hope, of faith in what is possible. It is the refusal to accept the world as it is, the insistence on imagining what it could be. It is the willingness to risk everything for the sake of something more. You feel the power rising within you, the sense that you are discovering something revolutionary. The fear of freedom is real, but so is the joy of breaking free. The world is not fixed, not finished, not fated. It is open, alive, waiting for you to create. You begin to see that the ultimate act of rebellion is to live fully, to love deeply, to risk everything for the sake of being alive. It is to refuse the comfort of numbness, the safety of certainty, the prison of the familiar. It is to step into the unknown, to trust the process, to become who you are. You realize that you are not alone. All around you, others are waking up, breaking free, creating new worlds. The rebellion is spreading, growing, gathering force. The old systems are trembling. The old stories are unraveling. The old fears are losing their power. You sense that something extraordinary is possible. A new way of being, a new way of living, a new way of loving. The world is waiting. The future is open. The path is yours to create. Are you ready to rebel? Are you ready to break free? Are you ready to become the author of your own life? The answer is not in the stars, not in the past, not in the voices of authority. The answer is in you, in your courage, your honesty, your willingness to risk everything for the sake of freedom. The time is now. The rebellion has begun. You stand in the aftermath of rebellion, the air still humming with the energy of your defiance. The walls that once confined you have crumbled, and the world stretches out before you, vast, wild, uncharted. You feel the pulse of possibility in your veins, the ache of old fears dissolving into something new. For the first time, you sense the true weight of freedom, not as a burden, but as a gift, a mystery, a call. But as the dust settles, a deeper question emerges, more haunting than any that came before. What now? What does it mean to live in a world without cages, without scripts, without the comfort of certainty? What does it mean to be truly free? You look around and see others too, standing in the ruins of their old lives, blinking in the unfamiliar light. Some are jubilant, some are lost, some are trembling with the enormity of what they have chosen. You realize that freedom is not a destination, not a prize to be won, but a state of being, a way of moving through the world, of meeting each moment with open eyes and an open heart. You remember the paradox that haunted you at the beginning, that we long for freedom, yet fear it, that we build cages, then dream of escape, that we crave certainty, yet are drawn to the unknown. Now, standing in the aftermath, you see the paradox for what it is, not a flaw, but a feature of the human condition. Freedom is terrifying because it is real. It is the raw material of existence, the blank canvas on which you must paint your life. You realize that the ultimate truth is not that freedom is dangerous, but that it is essential. It is the source of all creativity, all growth, all meaning. Without it, life becomes a repetition, a performance, a slow death. With it, life becomes an adventure, a risk, a dance with the unknown. You see now that the fear of freedom is not something to be conquered or eliminated, but something to be befriended. It is the shadow that gives shape to the light, the tension that makes the music possible. To be free is not to be fearless, but to move forward in spite of fear, to choose, to act, to create, even when the outcome is uncertain. You remember the words of Viktor Frankl, that the last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude, to choose one's way. You realize that this choice is not a one-time event, but a continual process, a daily act of courage, a daily act of love. Each morning, as you take your first breath, you are invited to choose again, to step into the unknown, to risk being alive, to embrace the fullness of your humanity. You see that the world is not waiting to be discovered, but to be created. There are no maps, no instructions, no guarantees. There is only the invitation to participate, to shape, to transform. The meaning of your life is not given, but made, moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. You realize that the ultimate truth is not outside you, but within. It is the quiet voice that says yes to possibility, that dares to dream, that refuses to settle for less. It is the courage to be vulnerable, to be seen, to be known. It is the willingness to love, to lose, to begin again. You look back on the journey, the fear, the struggle, the rebellion, and see that each step was necessary, each challenge a teacher, each wound a doorway. The fear of freedom was never your enemy, but your guide, leading you to the edge of yourself, inviting you to leap. You see now that the world is full of others, each facing their own edge, their own moment of truth. You feel a kinship, a connection, a sense of belonging that is deeper than conformity, deeper than approval. It is the bond of those who have chosen to be alive, to be free, to be human. You realize that the final, most powerful realization is this, that freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the presence of possibility. It is not the erasure of fear, but the embrace of uncertainty. It is not the end of struggle, but the beginning of creation. You see that the world is waiting, not for heroes, not for saviors, but for ordinary people willing to risk everything for the sake of being alive. The future is not written, it is waiting to be imagined, to be built, to be lived. You feel the call, the invitation, the urgency. The time is now. The choice is yours. You close your eyes and listen to the beating of your heart, to the whisper of your soul, to the silence that holds all possibility. You feel the fear, the excitement, the longing. You know that nothing will ever be the same. You open your eyes and step forward into the unknown, into the light, into the fullness of your freedom. The world is new. The story is yours. The adventure has just begun. And as you walk into the future, you carry with you the ultimate truth that freedom is both the question and the answer, the wound and the healing, the terror and the joy. It is the gift you give yourself, the gift you give the world. So go risk, create, love, lose, begin again. The world is waiting. You are free.